somehow or other, miraculously, the hat shop are back. I think that's so wonderful. And one of the things that's so fun is they're in London. And so I'm going to be swapping with John Charles, who is our general conversationalist, and also our baker. And if you've noticed that we have some superb treats as ever from John. Hi. And if you have numbers, did everybody who bought a book get a number up front? Pat was handing them out if you bought your book. If you didn't, you might want to get one because we actually have, do you have the prize somewhere? Okay, you want to, we have a really beautiful prize. Jacob, who's doing the sound, his mother does really interesting work in wood and made this beautiful, like, bread and cheese board. Oh. So I'm giving it away today. I'm sacrificing it because I can get another one. But anyway, if you have a number, then John and Jen will do a drawing for it. Right, it's the illegal lottery that we run here at the Poison Pen. I figured the IRS can't even audit Trump, so they're not going to ever catch me. So we're probably okay.
I think we're good.
I know. I don't even want to talk about the spectacle of this week. You know, I mean, if we don't look like idiots all over the world, it's really unbelievable.
Well, next week, Britain will probably have another prime minister, so we're fine. Yeah.
Good thought. Just everybody disintegrates. Well, all right. So one of the things I want to talk to Jen about is the food, because this is London. And I noticed that many places in the book you are talking about food that is basically indigenous to London, right?
Oh, yeah.
So did you force yourself to eat your way through the city in order to do this?
I did. When I was back there, I tried to stick to, all the traditional. So it's, bangers and mash and fish and chips. And my favorite was, we had a pub when we stayed in the Kensington area. It was the Swan. And it was like an original coach house from hundreds of years ago. Now it's a pub, and everybody knew everybody, and it was fabulous. But they made a Yorkshire pudding, and then they put Guinness, beef stew in it. So, yeah, I ate my way through London.
They have such strange names for food, particularly puddings. Some of them are sort of obscene or slightly uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, I thought you did a great job. So if you all are interested in British food, you will have an opportunity to explore that. But one of the lines, we're way at the back of the book, but this is not a spoiler, that I particularly liked, is that Reader Guy. Tell me about Reader Guy, because then I'm going to have a little quote here, because I was totally caught by these few paragraphs about Reader Guy. Who is he?
Oh, is this for the next book coming out? Is this the advance? It probably is.
Excerpt from Summer Reading.
Oh, in May I have my next women's fiction rom-com coming out, and it's called Summer Reading. Because the male protagonist in it is a librarian, but he is on the ferry headed from Woods Hole to Martha's Vineyard, and he meets our heroine, who is dyslexic. So books are not really her thing. So of course their meet cute involves an incident with Reader Guy, or as she calls him, Hot Reader Guy, and his book that he's reading on the ferry. Oops. And then she finds out he's the director of the public library. So they are not what you would call a natural fit. So it was a lot of fun to write.
I can see that. And Stephen King. You want to read this? I think it's so funny. Just that one paragraph I thought was hilarious. It's over on the left-hand page, like the third one down, right? See where it says Stephen King and then she...
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Reader Guy leaned an elbow on the railing. Now I had his attention. When you do have time, what do you like to read? He asked. Uh-oh. I hadn't really thought the natural conversational trajectory through. Shit. I scanned my brain for the title of a book. Any book. Stephen King, I said. One does not grow up in New England and not know the King. Big fan. Huge. Not a lie, because I'd watched all the movies repeatedly. So you like the scary stuff, he asked, like Stephen Graham Jones, Riley Sager, and Simone St. James. The heat of the sun, the heat of the sun beat down on my head. Why was it suddenly so hot out here?
I love that. I like the selection of authors that you had there.
I think when you're a librarian or a former librarian but a book lover, one of the best parts for me about all the series is I can always work in readers and the things that they love. And I kind of look at it like, I think I would love to say to those authors, if I mentioned you, I like you.
So we actually said we were going to have the best hat contest but I see only one person in the audience.
Which is a lovely hat, by the way.
Very nice. Who is going to be eligible to win. So I have an extra prize for you that I will.
Ooh.
Oh, right. Hey, Paige, there you are. I was looking to see if you had a hat, but no. And for those of you who were here in December for Paige's book launch, Paige being in the back there, and she has a book out in April, but Kate Carlisle is still not doing well from COVID, which is why she could not come to join us in December.
Yeah.
But she has a book out May 2nd, and she said that she's planning to come for that. So for those of you who ordered a book or whatever, we can ship her books now, or you can just wait till May 2nd since she doesn't have a new book out. We'll talk to you about that. But I didn't want you to think that Kate had completely disappeared. But she has not. Anyway, what happened to the Hat Shop book? Because I distinctly remember you saying that there weren't going to be any more.
They went through that pub-apocalypse kind of where they weeded out cozy mystery authors. It looks like we're going through that again, just FYI. And I had 3 series, and they were just kind of like, oh, honey, you have too many, so we're going to just lose the Hat Shop. And I was like, so I can't go to London for research. And then a year or so went by, and, you know, things settle, and I started writing romance and was keeping up with the Cupcake in the Library. And then I had this little window of opportunity, and I thought, you know, we ended the last Hat Shop in Paris, and it just feels wrong. Can I just write one more? And they said, sure. So that was Buried to the Brim. And then I thought that was it, you know. And then I looked at my schedule, and it was like, you know, a little window of opportunity. How about we write another one? And they were like, okay. So it's, and I think probably there might be another Hat Shop, but it might be the series that comes out every 2 years, because it's where.
It's wherever you have a window of opportunity, right?
And an idea. That's kind of like, I've killed off a lot of people, so it's getting tricky, you know.
Well, I really love the title of this, Fatal Fascinator, because any of you who spend any time on Pinterest or anywhere else watching the royal family or any of that will realize that hats are the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. And the more, have we ever seen Kate Middleton without a hat in public?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure we have.
No, it's a thing. Wearing a hat it's, you know. Interestingly, with Fascinators, they've been banned from Ascot, from the royal enclosure at Ascot. No Fascinators.
Was that because they got so big and so whatever nobody could see?
I think, well, I think King Charles, which is so weird to say.
I know.
I think he might reverse it, but it was Queen Elizabeth. She just did not feel that they were appropriate for Ascot. She wanted bigger, I think. Because, you know, Fascinators.
Right. Well, I mean, she obviously had fabulous hats and coordinated. I mean, when you think of her, don't you see her in some astonishing color? Mm-hmm. All completely, you know, color coordinated, and always with her purse and like a, you know, sort of a canopy of dogs moving around in front of her. I now have my own personal canopy of dogs, so I now understand. We have 2 Cavapoos, and at home, we can't move without them. So I sort of understand how the clergy thing went. Right. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to go and return more books. Sorry, but that's the way the bookstore works. And hand this over to John, who will give you a more intelligent commentary than I. If I can get this off. Here we go. Okay. Thank you. What I really needed was just to sit down for a few minutes. So
inventory will not wait.
Well, thank you all very much for coming, and I'll see you in a bit.
All right, good to see you, Barbara.
Vamp.
Tagging in, tagging out.
Somewhere on the internet, people are wondering what's happening.
I know. They're like, what's going on? We'll wait till we bring in the 3rd person.
There you go. That's Paige.
Yeah, Paige will be up in a minute.
Let's go back a little bit and start with the origins of the series.
Okay.
Every series has some kind of hook, whether it's libraries or cooking or art. Why hats?
I know. London Hat Shop is a little out there. You know, it's not your knitting, baking.
It's a very narrow readership.
Yeah, I think I own it. I'm pretty sure. I think millinery and murder, it's all mine. It was, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago. A while. But I remember watching Will and Kate get married. And I stayed up, you know, I was probably working. Another mystery. But I stayed up watching, and how many of you watched? Okay, good. I'm not alone. And Princess Beatrice came out in that hat, and the internet just blew up, and everybody was super mean. And for those of you who didn't see it, it was a Fascinator, and it was like in front and center, and it was like a beigey peach color, and then it had these things coming off of it as they do. It looked like a dead squid. I mean, not to be mean, and you know, and the internet responded accordingly. She's lovely, but that not the best pick. So as I was watching the internet kind of explode on her and the hat, my first thought was, of course, wow, it's a pretty bad hat, and oof, they're being awfully mean, and wow, if I was her, I'd want to murder the guy who made that hat. Ding! So luckily, my editor, who you know, is a Kate Middleton fan, and her name's also Kate, and it was like the middle of the night, and I'm like, I have an idea. She just wrote back, yes, yes, yes. So it was kind of like a perfect timing thing. And for me, it was really interesting because I loved Princess Diana. She got married when I was like in middle school. So, you know, growing up, you watched that. And she was just lovely and beautiful. And I haven't really been locked in on the royals since she passed because it kind of broke me. But it was my opportunity to kind of learn about hats and royal customs and British customs. And so it's been a really fascinating book to write, you know. I always think of America and Britain, it's like two countries separated by the same language, you know, because there's just certain things you can't say over there that we drop and vice versa. So it was kind of a fascinating series to write, and I went all in.
So you were not a hat person before?
Not really.
In your own life?
No, baseball hats. I mean, I love looking at the pictures of Jackie O and the pillbox hat. You know, man, she could rock a pillbox hat, you know. But it really ended after that. It was the 70s, and it was the, you know, long hair parted in the middle, and the hats were like gone, you know. So it's really the 50s and 60s we kind of, and I was reading up on it the other day actually because I forget why. Because I'm not writing a hat shop. But they were talking about how, after the Depression, really in America, hats stopped because it was just a not affordable luxury. Yeah. So between the Depression and the World Wars, hats just became, and we kind of let it go. But interestingly enough, they got bombed way more than we did, and yet the British still wear hats to, you know, weddings, funerals.
No. We're unruly. They're cultured.
We are unruly. Yeah. We are. And we like our hair.
So what kinds, did you actually visit hat makers? What kinds of research is involved?
I did. I stayed in Notting Hill because that's where the books are set. And, you know, went to Portobello Market because that's where the shop is on Portobello Road. And I found a couple of hat makers that were very gracious and let me come in and visit them. And one of them was in Kensington and did make hats for the royal family. And they were amazing. I mean, hopefully they're not watching. But, you know, it's like a thing, and then it has like chopsticks on it. And it went for 600 pounds. Yeah, that's like 1,200 American. So it was just kind of like.
But it's the name recognition.
Yeah, she was a designer.
It's like modern art. You look at three splotches of red paint. And, yeah.
I mean, can you imagine losing your hat that costs 600 pounds?
Well, if you can afford a hat that costs 600 pounds, you don't care if you lose it.
This is true. They're probably paying you to wear it. Yeah. Probably. So, no, it was fascinating, but they were very nice. And it is an industry. And fascinating. So, yeah, I've enjoyed learning a lot.
Tell us a little bit about the new book. What's the elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch is, well, it's Scarlett. You know, people always ask you who are your favorite characters that you write, and I would never admit it to the others, but it's Scarlett. I think she's just me, but cooler and cuter, and you know, all that. But just kind of that enthusiasm, that love of people, that kind of like that. I'm definitely an extrovert, which is kind of a freak thing in writer land. There's
just kind of the golden retriever.
Yeah, totally. I am.
You are.
I remember this is off topic because we're going to just where we're going. I was working at the library, and it was one of those nights where it was just the staff, and everybody was sitting there thinking about what kind of dog we were, as you do in the library at 8:30 after a long day. And everybody was very, you know, pretty much spot on with their personality. Like we had the guy who was the lab, you know what I mean? And then we had the one other person who was definitely a terrier. And I thought I was like a poodle.
Yeah.
You know, because I had a standard poodle at the time, and I was like, oh, I'm like her, because she was very, like, she would sit in the passenger seat with my husband, you know, like being, like she was being chauffeured, and she was great. And I loved her, and I thought, yeah, I'm totally her. And my friends all looked at me like, do you even know you? And it was, yeah, you're a golden retriever. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, they're cool. So anyway, where were we?
You were telling us the elevator pitch for Fatal
Oh,
Fascinator.
so Fatal Fascinator, I had a little window of time, and I really wanted to kind of get out of London. Like, first it was, well, we ended it in Paris, and I want to get back to London, and this time I was like, I want to get out of London and go to the south. So we went down to Sussex, and I got to do research on castles, you know, Moat and Bailey, and like how they form, and that's fascinating. There's like over 4,000 castles, you know, ruins and such, and I think there's 800 that are actually navigable in Britain. So I mean, how many do we have in the States?
I think there's one in Arizona.
Yeah, there's one on the Camelback,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Other than like vanity castles, that's what we have, and they probably were for them too. But so it was just interesting. So I wanted to get into a castle. I wanted to have a ghost because I love ghosts, and I wanted to kind of be in the wedding world in Britain, because they get very into their hen parties, which is like our bachelorette parties, and you know, so it's just kind of fun to compare and contrast the customs.
Do you have to change? I mean, when your books go to England, do you have to change things to fit their cultural references?
Sometimes it depends, and when I started the series, in my mind, it was a millinery shop on Portobello Road, and they were British. And then I sat down to write it, and I was like, oh, girl, you are not British. Because I think some people you can't, like when you read a British author who writes an American character, and they'll slip up, they'll say something like, she was pushing the pram, and it's like, yeah, that's a stroller. And that's how, and I knew I would reveal myself like on page 1. So I write it mostly from Scarlett's perspective. I think it's the only series I write in first person. Because then you're just always
Well, other
in her
than your
head.
rom-coms.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and actually the one I'm writing right now, To Be Read, is set in Ireland, and same thing. It's an American in Ireland, because that way if you mess it up, it's from her perspective, and she's an idiot, so it's fine. Right?
What does it take when you start writing a book? Because I know some writers know in advance everything. They know the suspects, the clues, the murder victim, or some writers just have a vague idea of like a body in the library and go with that.
I'm looking at you, Paige. Paige Shelton and I are
Where
very
in the
different.
spectrum do you fall?
Well, interestingly, I'm a plotter, so I usually know who died, how they died, who did it, you know, and I work backwards. When my husband and I first started dating, he was actually the one who kind of like made me think I could write mysteries, because I was complaining, and I was like, I'd like to write a mystery, but it's really hard. There's like red herrings and suspects, and he was just, you know, men just always problem solve. He just cut in and he was like, just write it backwards. So that's kind of how I outline. I outline backwards, where I know what happened. I know a lot. My outlines are usually about 10 pages. So you can kind of look at like each chapter as a paragraph. So I basically have, you know, Scarlett, someone shows up at the hat shop who hires Scarlett to make hats for the wedding. But then I have to write it. So I have to create those characters, and I have to create the conversations, and I have to, so, you know, a lot of people who don't plot say, well, if I know what happens, it's boring and I don't want to do it. But for me, it's like, I barely know what's happening, and now I have to make it interesting. And when I'm writing, I've noticed that if I'm bored while I'm writing it, it's boring to read. So that's kind of like, if I could give writers one tip, it's like, if you're bored writing it, throw it out, start over. You should be entertained while you're writing, I think. Or at least, you know, if you're writing a sad scene, you should be sad. If it's happy or funny, you should be laughing. Like, sometimes my jokes even I don't laugh at, and I'm like, well, that's annoying. But so for me, I am a plotter. But interestingly enough, in October, I have a book coming out called Sugar Plum Poison. And it's the next Cupcake Bakery, and it's a Christmas one. So I know most people know it comes out in April and May. This one's going to come out in October. And because I hadn't written, and cupcakes in Christmas just kind of felt like they would be fun. So I had this great plot, and my plot group, of which Paige and Kate Carlisle are in, we all hashed out the idea, and it was all, woohoo, this is gonna be great. And then I sat down to write it, and I'm like, I hate it. And I didn't write a plot. I was under the gun, like tick tock. The book was due. I had to get it done. So I wrote by the seat of my pants.
Wow.
I almost had a stroke. The whole time I kept thinking, how do people do that? I didn't know from page to page what would happen, you know, and I like to kind of at least, you know, when you end the day's work, I like to leave myself in a spot where I'm really excited to write the scene that's coming up. I didn't know what the scene was. I'd go to bed and be like, I can't breathe. So it was a horrible experience and I never want to do it again. But yeah, so I'm a plotter.
There's a lot of talk about authors' voices, authors' brands. You write a lot of different kinds of books. You write mysteries, you write romantic suspense, not romantic suspense, romantic comedies.
That's next.
Women's fiction. But your voice is consistent. It doesn't matter which book you're reading by you. That's Jenn on the page there. How would you describe your voice to someone who's never read you?
That's a really good question because I'm in my own head.
Step outside.
I think, well, you know a lot of authors, and you know me pretty well. You know, we've been doing this for a long time. So when you read my books, are you hearing my voice like in your head? I'm sorry.
You know, because
How annoying.
one of the things I love is the humor. One of your key components is humor.
Yeah, that's
You have a
I'm
distinctive-
definitely the comedy. I mean, I'm, you know, Gen X. So mom went back to work, you know, as soon as I was in school. So we were the latchkey kids. So my brother and I were raised on like, you know, we got home from school, we got snack, we went outside and, you know, harassed the neighborhood. You know, we were the kids who could run around, you know, on our own and nobody thought anything of it. And then it was back in because the homework had to be cranked out before mom showed up. But also we watched sitcoms. So
yeah.
it was like The Monkees or I Dream of
Gilligan's
Jeannie,
Island. Yeah.
Gilligan's Island, Bewitched, you know, all the stuff that was afternoon television. So I think my formative years were just everything. Like I can't have a problem that lasts more than 22 and a half minutes because that is how I know how to cope. So I think the comedy is just, you know, I just grew up on it. You know, it's kind of spoon fed.
It's part of your character though too,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
It always, yeah. I mean, even when something really, really horrific happens, my family is usually, you know, cracking inappropriate jokes about it. You know, get through. But yeah,
I think you're dialogue driven.
definitely, because
yeah.
I never shut up.
Well, yeah, but I couldn't see you writing like one of those sweeping sagas with pages of description of.
The snowflakes, 5
Yeah.
pages on a snowflake.
Mhm.
I can promise that will never happen.
What is your strength as a writer, or strengths? What do you kind of?
I think it
Struggle
is
with
dialogue. I
dialogue.
think partly when I was a kid, I started out as a waitress in an ice cream shop. So my friend and I figured out how you could, you know, suck down a whole scoop in one swallow. We were really good at that in the back room. But it was my first working with people. And, you know, I grew up in beach town in Connecticut, Niantic. And I worked at the Friendlies. And right across the train tracks was the beach. So people would come in with their screaming kids and but you started like observing, like I started watching people. And then we get to the point where we would know the regulars, like, oh, here comes mint chocolate chip, you know, and stuff like that. And when you start watching people, you start listening how they talk to each other. You know, like we just went to Boston and we got stuck in the airport for extra. And my family was just like, oh my God. Yes, I am people watching. This is amazing. You know, because with COVID, it's like people watching really got shut down. So it's like I've been lacking, you know, for a couple of years. So I think dialogue, and I think I write comedy, but I mean, like I say, I grew up watching sitcoms and my family is inherently funny, but I don't know where comedy comes from. Like people will say, you know, how are you funny? Why do you think you're so funny? I don't think you're funny. I think I'm funny. It's all the better. But I think, you know, comedy, there's certain tricks. It's like the misdirection. Like you take them one way and then you flip it around. You know, that's usually funny, especially when you're like totally setting up a scene and then it turns on them in a humorous way. Listening to how people talk, you know, and the little zingers people get in. And for example, my brother was the king of the dry humor. he could just always get me. So we were in a emergency room, taking care of a family member, and there's me, little sunshine, the youngest one, and I was just like, hey, quality time with the fam. And my brother looks at me and he's just like, you mean doing time? And it's just that kind of like, I just grew up with that. Everybody in my family was like that. But so I think it's just kind of how you hear things, and if you can turn it funny, spin it around.
And there's always a little bit of romance to your stories too.
Yeah, I think
A love interest or some kind
yeah,
of.
kind of keeps the pages turning. Everybody needs, I think, a love interest. Even if it's only in your head. Just don't stalk them.
So Barbara's talked about what's next for you, which comes in May, which is summer reading.
Very excited. As I was talking about it before, this one came from my agent, actually. She gave me the title and nothing else. And it was like, thanks. No, she's amazing with titles. She actually came up with the title of The Plot and the Pendulum.
Oh.
So she's kind of our go-to person for titles, or when you have to do back cover copy.
Synopsis.
Yeah, she can really get in there, whereas I'm kind of like, well, this happened, and then it's really hard when you've written 100,000 words to cut it down to 2 paragraphs.
Well, also, you don't want to reveal spoilers or
yeah, and
anything
I'm
like that.
the one like, oh, you know who did it? And I would be the person who does that right on the cover. Because, talking problem. So she actually just sent me an email out of the blue, and she said, I have a title for you. And I was like, cool. She's like, summer reading. And I'm like, oh, librarian. If you've been a librarian in the public, summer reading is a thing. Takes over the whole summer. It's exhausting. It's brilliant, but it's good and bad. So I knew right away that a librarian had to be the character. So I thought, oh, okay, well, she'll be the librarian. And then I heard that screech of brakes in my head. I was like, he's the librarian, because I don't feel like men in books are represented enough. I had someone say to me, wait, we'll come back to that. And then when I thought of the female, when you have a male librarian, it's like, what is the person that they wouldn't normally connect with? Well, it would be a non-reader. And then I thought, well, why is she a non-reader? And I was like, well, she's dyslexic, and I have dyslexia in my family. So that was something I knew up close and personal. So then I thought, oh, now we're cooking. And then she became a chef, because when I did a little digging, I found out that Martha's Vineyard was predominantly populated by Portuguese fishermen from the Azores. Wow, my sister-in-law is from the Azores and came over when she was 7 and is in that Massachusetts community. So her family, have just embraced my mom and I, since she married my brother. And we had a session last fall where they all taught me how to cook. So it was like all the authentic Portuguese recipes, which I did put some in the book too. So, because I decided she had to be a chef. She had to be Portuguese, she had to be dyslexic, and she had to be a chef. Because as a chef, you're such a visual learner, and there's so many ways to learn that you wouldn't necessarily need to like.
You wouldn't get stuck on reading.
So that was a thing. So that it just kind of, and after that, it just kind of mushroomed into just like, it's probably one of my favorite books. Just because he rides a motorcycle, he's totally hot. Because a friend of mine said to me, she's like, male librarians are not known for being like hot. And I'm like, he is. He's like Keanu Reeves as a librarian hot. And she was like, okay. And then I forgot what I was going to come back to. So whatever.
Okay. You've been writing for a while. I won't say how long because it dates both of us. What changes have you seen in publishing that you kind of are reacting to as a writer? I mean, does publishing influence what you want to write? Can you kind of ignore it and just continue to do what you want? What role does it play?
We are definitely, the sand is shifting. And I think, people always say, since you've been published, what advice would you give people? And wow, it's just, you have to, the number one thing, and I hate it because when I was struggling to be a writer, I got hit with all the same advice. Write what you want to read, and it was like, what does that mean? Just want to be published. And then, things like, don't follow the trends, find your own voice, all that stuff. And the really frustrating thing is it's all very, very true. I think self-publishing is amazing for people who are frustrated with the system, but I also think so much comes with being traditionally published that you just can't get when you're self-published. You know, I feel like I'm in the catbird seat because I'm at a point in my career where I can publish traditionally, but I can also publish my own stuff. But I have to do it appropriately. I have to hire editors. I have to hire cover artists. I have to hire people who know what they're doing, because I don't know how to do that. I know how to write a book, but I don't know how to edit a book. That is a skill. You want someone to do that with your work. Trust me. Cover artists, you know, that's what draws people in, the cover. I mean, we now live in a
You have
digital
like
world where you want
15
the
seconds, I think, for people to see a cover.
15 seconds.
And now it has to fit on the phone.
Yeah,
because
it has to be that big, but be
Yeah.
seeable, but be awesome. No pressure. Like if I was a cover artist, I'd be like, no problem. I gotcha. I'm very fortunate. I did self-publish a bunch of novellas last year because the women's fiction, for me, I wrote two, and then I had kind of a, ironically, a gap year. That was supposed to be the name of one of the books. So it kind of makes me laugh. But anyway, so I had a gap year and I just thought, wow, this world is moving really fast. You know, you can't tap out for a year. So I wrote the 3 novellas, you know, as you know, I think I've told you the story before about for various reasons, one of which included spite, but we won't go there today.
Yes,
so
you're on camera. So.
exactly. Keep it nice, Jen. But I wrote the 3 novellas and then just had such a blast because I knew enough authors who could say, hire this girl as your editor, hire this person as your cover artist. So then we got to do all that. But the really interesting thing, you know, when you're an author, you write the book, you turn it into your editor. They send it back with their revisions, hopefully light ones, sometimes not. You do the revisions, you turn it back in, they turn it over to the copy editor. The copy editor is the person who catches every little, and you can get some very, 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 very uptight copy editors, which is good and bad, because sometimes they don't get your voice. So I tend to make up words. If I can't find a word I want, I'll just make it up. And I think I make them insane. They're like, that's not a word. I know, but it's my word, so just go with it. Ah! You can hear them ripping their hair out. So then it goes to the copy edits. Then it goes to the page designers, and they actually design the layout of what the printed book and ebook. See, people think ebooks are free, but are nothing. They do nothing. But look at how much work is already involved in this ebook that you're buying.
If it's done right.
If it's done well, like
Yeah.
in publishing. So then it goes to the page layout. Then it comes back to the author, and they tell you have one more shot to find all the little typos, blah, 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 blah. But you can't, they even say on this, we've already done the page layout. It will cost us a fortune to rewrite anything in here. So this is really just boo-boos and small little errors. So you're like, okay, cool, I got you. And then you go through your galleys, and then you send it in, and then it comes out. So that's a lot.
And then someone finds an error on page 73.
Yes, and then someone emails you like, you know, you used the wrong name of the wrong character. And then you write back and you say, thank you so much. We will catch that in the e-thing. But the print book, we're never going to, like, you know, because, you know, money. So, and I do appreciate when people let me know there's a boo-boo, but, you know, really? It's like it's 100,000 words. One boo-boo? I'm feeling pretty good. Yeah, exactly. So, but as a grammatical, grammar Nazi myself, I'm like, I get you. You know, that would drive me nuts too. So I feel like very fortunate, I think, and most authors, I think, are feeling this way, where we're kind of in this like renaissance where we can publish traditionally, we can self-publish. I feel bad for the self-published authors in a way, because unless you have the other traditionally published option going for you, you are in a real pile of self-published. Now, that being said, we always hear about, well, she was self-published and she sold billions and she rose to the
That's
top.
like less than 1%.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's less than 1%.
There's 500,000 titles published every year.
Yeah, isn't that insane?
Yeah.
And only 58,000 are traditionally published.
Yeah.
So you're looking at another, you know,
450 or
450,000
something,
that
yeah.
are self. And so, you know, people are trying to be discovered. And then you get into things like, I think what's changed for me is social media. How many of you use social media? A little bit. Facebook? Instagram?
That's how I found out you lived in Arizona.
Oh,
On
see,
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. See, there you go. And then TikTok is big. See? The one person under 25. I'm on TikTok. But I think for an author, I think when I started, there wasn't self-publishing. I mean, because
Well,
I
it was
published.
called Vanity Press.
Yeah, it was called Vanity Press, and
Back
it was
then.
paper. It wasn't ebooks. I published for the first time romance in 2001, I think. So it was about 21. I was a child, but it was about 21 years ago. So it was totally different. And then everything's changed, you know, as the internet has changed all of our lives. The tricky thing right now, I think, for authors is, and I never thought this would be the problem, but so I'm working away and the scene gets hard. What's everybody doing on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram? I should promote. Oh, I should read that. Oh, let me add that to my TBR. And the next thing I know, 3 hours have passed. I've learned how to talk to a llama, and I'm done. You know, it's like, it's killing me. That's really what's killing me. Production, you know, productivity wise, it's too easy when you're bored. You know, I see one of my library colleagues here. And we used to water cooler it, remember? We'd be like running out to the desk, coming back in, grab a water, but we had like 5 minutes to talk. It wasn't like you could ignore the patrons coming in. You had to get your work done. Now I can sit there for 2 hours. Not getting stuff done. So that's problematic. But I also think the other thing is the pressure to be a presence. When sometimes I have to step back and say, wait a minute, my job, and if we're using, you know, new speak, is to be a content creator. I'm creating the content of the books. That is my job. And if I'm online all day trying to, you know, freaking out because somebody else has like an Instagram takeover happening, and why don't I have one? Or you can just make yourself insane. And you know, this person sold 21 million books on TikTok last year. It's like, well, good for her. That's not how it's gonna work for, like, that's probably not gonna happen for me. I'm on TikTok, but it's ridiculous. It's like, oh, every week I'm like, oh, I should do something, and then it's just, you know. So I think the thing that's changed is the expectations of the public. You know, they want you. I mean, there aren't many. I don't know how many of you read The Song of Achilles or Circe by Madeline Miller.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love these. She was like a high school English teacher, and they're just, you know, Greek mythology, but I don't know, there's something about her writing that's just insanely accessible, and they're brilliant stories. She blew up on TikTok. She's not on TikTok. And to me, that's the way it should work. Like, it should be an organic thing where the readers do it. So, you know, get to work, people. Kidding. I'm not kidding. No, I'm kidding. But I feel like that in that regard, social media works. But I feel like as an author, it's like you have a responsibility to be there or not a little bit. But your job is to write a better book every time you sit down to write a book. And I feel like the thing I always have to remind myself is that in a career path, it's like the job is to write the book. And the real job is to write a better book than the last book you wrote. And that's how you stay in the game, I think. That was a very long answer. I'm so sorry.
No, it was interesting because you become a presence in the publishing industry. At least I judge it by when other writers want you to blurb them. And there's like every mystery book in the world has lead child. Lead child says fabulous, or lead child says stupendous. Every cover.
Yes.
You've been doing that because I've been opening romance books and Jenn McKinlay says fabulous. Jenn McKinlay. How does that work?
It's tricky, and because, you know, I kind of have a lot of mixed feelings about it. First of all, I want to always support other authors. And there's very rarely when I'm asked to read a book and endorse it that I can't find something that I like about it, because I know how hard this is. I know the day in, day out. I know the tears. I know the, you know, midnight hot fudge sundae. I gotta get through it. So usually for me, the requests will come from my agent or my editor or a publicist, and they will say, hey, Jen, because you wrote this book, and and this is what I love. This is my favorite part. They'll do a whole paragraph on how much they love you. So, you know, like, keep it up. And, you know, and they'll reference your book and what they liked about it. And then they'll say, I have this author. She's a debut author, you know, and her book has these same elements. And we know you love humor, and she's really funny. And would you consider? And the thing is, you do make an agreement that it'll be an honest endorsement, because if my name's going to get put on the cover of their book is saying, Jen says this is great. I really want it to be great, you know. So it's, you know, and it's interesting. But yeah, I do get a lot of requests, and it's fun. But then it's hard too, because you know, you agree to it, and they're like, we need it April 1st, and it's January, and I'm like, I got you. And then my book blows up. I get COVID, or, you know, last year I felt terrible. It was the first time I ever had to just tell people, I can't do it. I can't. I'm so behind, and COVID just took away a month. And, you know, when you write on pretty tight deadlines like I do, it was like, I felt I spent the rest of the year just trying to catch up. So all those people, I'm like, I'll do it next year. So it's funny because yesterday I just got like 3 emails. Like, so you said next year, and it's next year. And I'm like, I'm in, it's cool. So I enjoy it because I really do like supporting other authors, because I know how hard it is. But I also, I like to see how other people work.
Yeah, also it's, I mean, not to take anything away from what you're doing, but it's another form of marketing.
Yeah, if your name's on their book.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That I was going to say that, and I forgot.
I don't think Lee Child is doing it out of the goodness of his heart, but yeah.
It does get to be, I mean, it can get to be a lot. Like sometimes you really have to kind of pace yourself. But I do, you know, it is, what's weird to me is those endorsement requests come in. Like I'm endorsing, or, you know, last year when I caught up, I started endorsing books that'll come out at the end of this year.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I will have forgotten that I read them.
Yeah.
And I will be in here looking at a book and going, Jenn McKinlay, oh yeah, she knows what she's talking about. And then I get to remember that there was one book that really stuck out that I endorsed last year that I think is coming out this spring. And I'm horrible with authors' names. See, I can even endorse your book and not remember your name or your title.
What color was the cover?
Beige.
Okay.
It's beige, and it has a line drawing of, I think, the man and the woman, and I believe it's a reimagination set in Toronto, Canada of
Romeo and Juliet?
no,
Pride and
Rochester
Prejudice?
guy.
Oh, Jane Eyre.
Yes.
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
It's
yes.
brilliant. I loved it.
Edmund and something
Yes,
or other?
Edmund and
Great.
we are horrible
we've got the
librarians.
title. But yeah, I've seen it. It is coming, and it's a modern take on Jane
Yes,
Eyre.
it's a modern take on Jane Eyre. It's a beige cover. The author's brilliant. It's set in Toronto. I loved it. Anyway, helpful. Yep. Now go to your library and say beige book, and the librarian will give you that look, that dead stare.
So who else have you discovered that you want to share?
She was probably my most exciting. I haven't been doing a lot of reading because they're a mess. My deadlines are a mess. I went to Ireland, and I'm an idiot because I thought, oh, I can write while I'm in Ireland. Well, why would you?
Yeah.
You know, so it was like, okay, my writing turned into taking notes on what the Irish people said because, oh, I might use that in the book. Yeah, that was great, you know. So it was just dumb. And then my nephew got married. Congratulations, Phoenix and Bailey. Beautiful wedding. And I thought I would write during the wedding. Like, not at the wedding, you know. I'm not that crazy. But I thought, oh, we're there for a week. Well, no.
Instead, you were making bouquets. or
Yes.
something.
I was doing centerpieces and then, you know, eating, making merry. I miss making merry. So, yeah, I messed up my deadline. So I haven't read that much. I'm going to jump on the Oseman train, Richard Oseman.
Oh.
So he's sitting, my husband keeps reminding me, all 3 of those are on your nightstand. All 3 of those are on your, I know. But I'm also trying to read some Irish. So I have Carleen O'Connor, if anybody's read the Irish Cozy series. She's on my nightstand also. Because I want to kind of get into that Irish mindset when I finally finish that book someday.
Should we take questions?
Yes,
from
if
your
there are any.
fans?
If I haven't worn you out. Yeah.
So with your writing schedule of 3 series and some other things, how do you find time to read someone else's books?
Well, what's hilarious about that is usually I'm writing, and I have a file on my desktop, and in it because they usually send me e-copies because we don't do ARC, so I'm, you know, save some trees, and I'm all good with that. So the minute someone asks and I accept and they send me the PDF, I put it in a file that's books to read, you know, and then I date them. So every week I go in, is there anything this week? No, okay. And then, like, oh, that's due in 2 days. And that's what I do. I just sit there and read the book, and I'll read it in like a day or two, and then I'll write my endorsement, send it in, and then I go back to my work because I can't seem to get it together enough to read. It is what it is. I was the kid. This is why, for those of you who are parents who have kids that you don't feel are like shining, I was the kid who would, and this was back in the 80s when you could do this. I think my English class was 5th period, and I would have to write something, and I would go to the library, and I had a study carrel in the back corner that the librarian never checked. He was lazy. And I would skip all first 4 periods, and I would sit there and write, having not read any of the books, but just having them stacked there, and then just open it. I need a quote. Yeah, that, type it in, bang. And then I would turn it in, and I would get an A. So this is how I knew I was a fiction writer. But anyway, yeah, so I'm pretty good at the 11th hour. Hail Mary, yeah.
We had one of those, Miss Ellie.
Other questions for Jenn?
When you do have time to leisurely read for enjoyment, what types of genres do you like to read? Do you read mysteries and cozies, or are you?
Yeah, I do. I read my plot group so I can keep up with them, make sure they're on task. So I read Paige Shelton and Kate Carlisle always and forever. And I read, what I do tend to do when I'm writing a romance is when I read mysteries. And when I'm writing a mystery, I tend to read romance because I can be pretty influenced by other people's voices. And some author voices are much stronger than others, and you don't want to start sounding like another author. So I find if I separate the genre, I'm better that way. But I'm really kind of into, I've always loved YA. So I'm kind of doubling back to that. Did anybody else watch Wednesday? See, I tell you, I'm really Gen Z or something. Very good. It was a great show. You should all watch it. It was fun. But I'm kind of getting into like a gothic suspense. I'm getting into a darker.
That is the trend.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's just the fallout from the pandemic, and like during the pandemic we couldn't deal with it, so now we're doubling. I don't know. I hear paranormal's coming back. I don't know. It
is.
But I do read paranormal. I love science fiction, fantasy. I love mystery. I love all genre. I don't read much literary, but then I out myself as reading Song of Achilles and Circes, which were definitely literary, but awesome. So, I mean, I'm a big liar, so I pretty much read anything. Mostly if you come up to me and say, this was the best book, I'm like, oh, I'll read that. I trust other readers more than anything.
Way in the back.
Semi-question, semi-answer. Is the book you guys were talking about Jane and Edward?
Yes.
Yes. What was the author again?
Melody Edwards.
Melody Edwards. Jane and Edward. See, now we know.
It. I had Edward.
Yeah, you got that.
Yeah.
You would think I would have gotten Jane because it was like, Jane Eyre, but no. It was really good. I really loved it. See, I did. It's beige, mostly beige. Right off the cover, it is beige. I'm like the worst patron ever. Remember? It was a green book. It was like this big. It was about wealth, and you'd be like, okay.
If there's no more questions,
We were listening to NPR this morning on the driving around doing errands, and they were talking a lot about the ebooks and library and how much authors are not making on library books versus the printed books and all of that. And your background as a librarian and now being an author on the flip side of wanting the revenue from that, like, where do you feel about where that all comes out in a library? Everyone should be able to read something versus now you're a published author and
I know.
like the paycheck.
Yeah, it's, you know what, I think what people don't realize, and this is where I kind of stand. First of all, 2 kids in college, so library user. And I have author friends that are just like, no, you have to buy every book. And, on the upside, anything I buy, I can write off as an expense because it's in the business. So, but here's the thing that I think most people don't understand. And I would love to talk to the NPR people because they're wrong. Perfect example. I was looking at my numbers the other day because I being self-published, I can now see where I'm selling. Like I can get more information. I love my publisher, but they hire people to do that stuff, so I never really get to see the nuts and bolts. So this is why it is kind of like a perfect spot for writers right now to have a little bit in both, because you can look behind the curtain. So I looked behind the curtain the other day, and mostly you hear Amazon, ebooks, that's where all the money is. Everybody's doing Kindle Unlimited, blah, 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 blah. It's definitely an income stream for sure. When I set out to do it, it wasn't about profit. Like I said, I'm not kidding. It really was about spite. So. I was basically told that I couldn't do it. So of course I had to, and prove that I could because I'm a child. Anyway, moving on. I looked at the numbers, and this was really interesting to me. Amazon and Overdrive, which is where you can download ebooks through libraries, were the same. And we're talking in the thousands for earnings for me, for the 3 novellas. And I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. And you don't hear about that. So I would love to know where those are, because I would take them on. So where are you getting your numbers? I did very well at Amazon. Overdrive matched, which was actually shocking to me, because we're always told, libraries are not making money for authors. It's like, well, I beg to differ. And then Barnes & Noble came in a solid third. And then there's a lot of other like Kobo and other Apple books and stuff that kind of wandered in late to the party. But it was really fascinating to me, because the other thing people forget is that there are more libraries in the United States than McDonald's. I know, people are always shocked. And here's the thing. We're doing okay. We're doing okay, people. And here's the thing. When, I don't know, other library users, when I go into a library, I'm browsing. But if I find you and I like you, I'm coming to the pen and I'm buying everything you ever wrote. So for me, it's like, I feel like libraries and bookstores are a cooperative. And I feel like the profit point for authors at a library is tremendous. And people don't realize, okay, I'll tell one more story and I swear I'll shut up. But when my first hardcover library came out, it didn't do as well as the publisher wanted. And it was this is where life just mocks you sometimes. My dad was dying. My first hardcover had come out. The publisher called me and said, yeah, we're not going to publish you in hardcover anymore because you didn't do as well as we thought you should have. And I'm like, I'm kind of busy at my dad's deathbed, but it's cool. Thanks for the call. And then the next call, like 10 minutes later, was disregard that previous call, because the book, the publisher has a devoted arm to selling to libraries. Mm-hmm. They want their books in libraries because they know that thing that people are going to browse and see you and become a fan. And it's $1 billion industry. If there's that many libraries in the country, the math is pretty clear. So then the next call was, no. The library sellers are determined to keep you in hardcover because that's where you belong, in the libraries, in hardcover. Please forget about that previous call. And I'm like, okay, thanks. Yeah. But it was one of the first times I really got to see like how much is going on in publishing that the authors who are just kind of like content creating don't know about. And part of it is there's huge profit for authors. And this is, oh God, I'm almost like we need to shut off the camera, but I'll just forge ahead blindly like a moron.
I think this is your viral moment.
Right. This is why when you publish exclusively with someone maybe named after a jungle, you're not going to get into the libraries, and that's where you're going to get found. So while there's a lot of perks to being published in that one arm, you're also missing other things. So that would be my observation. Was that vague enough to not get me in trouble?
I think you were good. I also think you probably would want to add to, there's some misperception about when libraries buy digital copies. It's not like they buy it once. There's a limited number of users. So you
exactly.
Get the right.
One of the points they were bringing up is that there was either, they said originally it was, you'd buy so many lendings. So like you would buy a copy of a book and get 22 lendings out of it. And then some books weren't generating enough of that quickly enough. And so then it became, well, this time frame, regardless of how many times it's been lent. And
right.
they were talking about the pros and cons of that kind of different. And then just like anywhere, the wait list, if they only buy this many copies, it's generating buzz because then you have to sit on the wait list and then you see all these.
Then you want more.
And then, the comparison of the movie versus then it comes out in rental, you have to go see it in the theater. So then the delay of upping copies later. So that was sort of their whole take on that. It was very
No, and they're right, and it's changing. I mean, it's constantly changing. Like Overdrive, that's the statistics I had, but now I think they're changing to Libby, which is a new system. So that's changing. Yeah, which is
In fact, I think it's the beginning of this year.
is it?
I volunteered at the library, and we're telling everybody that
Get ready.
they have to download.
I'm so glad I
the
don't work in
Libby
the
app.
library anymore.
I know. I think ebooks are tremendous, and I feel like I do feel like libraries and publishing can cooperate. I mean, I know
Well, some publishers have really great marketing arms, like HarperCollins. So it just depends on the publisher.
it really does, and it depends on and that's the other thing too. For and I just thought of this when we were talking about it. Part of the reason I probably did well with Overdrive in libraries is because I am traditionally published. So library users would go in and see this rando novella and be like, "When did she do that?" I don't know. So they would, download it. But the other thing is on my end, because I did self-publish with Amazon, but I also published with a company called Draft to Digital, and because they just made it really easy, and I'm like super lazy, so that was like, I could set the price for libraries. So I set that because I was a former librarian. They were like, well, the standard library price is this. And I was like, oh, no. And we cut it in half. I'm like, I'm not going to charge libraries more than I'm going to charge, a regular
Bookstore,
person.
yeah.
So I dropped the cost of Overdrive because I could, which is kind of cool. So that could be why I did well, too. I don't know. Just a theory.
Well, you're also an established presence. I mean, there's lots of different factors. Because we should wrap up so people can get their books signed, the self-published novellas, you're putting them out yourself, correct?
I did. And then
Can the bookstore get copies of the print edition?
only
will
in
that
the
work?
omnibus. We did print. I put all three of them in one because I do try to save
So
free.
eventually we could possibly have a few here at the bookstore.
Yes.
Okay.
You could order it through the Poison Pen because it does have it's
For those of us that don't
It's an
like
Ingram.
the jungle
Yeah.
company that sells things.
You can order those from the Poison Pen. It's called Booked, and it's the three novellas all in one. And a lot of people are like, oh, I want each novella. And I was like, oh, but the cover of the omnibus is so cool. You want that one, trust me. And also, it's like, I see a lot of authors will put out in paper novellas, and the tree hugger in me just, I can't do it. I can't. I'm like, no, it has to be a significant book-sized book for me to actually commit it to paper. So it's there, and it was for people who don't like ebooks. I mean, I probably would have just kept them as ebooks, but enough people were like, I need it in paper.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But order it through the pen for sure.
We'll get into the system. I want to thank Jen for taking time to come back to the Poison Pen. You're always amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Thank everyone here for, oh, wait. Oh, yes. Apparently, we're supposed to do a raffle. Thank you, Paige. Paige is here. So apparently,
Paige was like, I got a number.
you could have just taken it home, Paige, and no one would have known. I mean, too late now.
Cool. 9.
Me.
Excellent. Uh-oh, there's 2 9s. Oh, one's a 6. I think. We got 2 9s. You're going to have to fight for it. Rock, paper, scissors?
No, she can have it.
Oh, you're very sweet. Oh. Oh, the hat.
Did you look
And
to
our
make sure
hat.
there's,
This is from Jen, not from me.
And the pen. Mostly the
there any-
pen.
Who won?
lady
Is
at
that
the
okay
end
if
there?
I'm doing?
Yes, thank you, Paige.
Yeah, wave to the camera, Paige.
Far from the pen drop those off. So yes.
Thank you, Paige. You're the bestest.
So we've come to an end. We've thanked everyone. We've done the raffle.
Right, did we forget anything?
We need to have you sign books. So we're going to have people, as they stand up, if you'll fold up your chairs and put them to the side, we'll keep you up here to sign. We've
be
got
right
books in the back if you need more copies.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you. Little chaotic. Well, it's you and me.
That's the story of your life.
I know. Ah,
Yeah,
nice.
do you need
I might still have my face in it.